Can the 49ers win 8 regular season games in a row? Find out next. Hello and welcome to Niner Nate's Nonsense, and the microphone's doing weird stuff now. Of course,
my shadow just came in.
I know. What I was referring to at the beginning of the show was the 49ers are about to do something unprecedented if they can win on Sunday. They will have beaten the Los Angeles Rams 8 regular season games in a row. And yes, I know they didn't win the one game they should have won, but 8 regular season games in a row is pretty wild. So we're going to break down the Niners as currently constructed. We're going to break down what's going wrong for the 49ers. We're going to break down what's going wrong for the Rams. And, of course, I had to bring on the one, the only, Tom Courts, a.k.a. Ramsbeat. How you doing, man?
Hey, great. Great to be back, Niner Nate.
Absolutely. I'm super happy to have you here. It's been kind of an interesting season. I think we did a preview, right before the season started. We had you on, and we thought both of our teams were going to be pretty good. And here we are sitting with the same record and the Seattle Seahawks leading the division, and they're terrible. So I don't know what's going on. It's been kind of a weird year. I mean, what is kind of the general consensus up there in Los Angeles down there in Los Angeles with the team and with what's going on with Stafford and the O-line and just everything?
Yeah, Stafford's not the problem. I mean, that whole arm fatigue thing has gone away. The tendonitis and everything, that's not an issue. He's making all his throws. So there's, the fact that that's gone away probably means there's bigger issues. And so the offensive line, similar to what you guys have, you guys at least have a cornerstone there at left tackle. I know he's kind of been in and out hurt, but our offensive line has been a complete disaster and, worst ranked in the league. And it started out not good. Remember at the beginning when we did our preview, I said to you, that O-line is the big question mark because we lost 2 starters, including Andrew Whitworth, Austin Corbett, and replaced them with our 2 backups from our team from the prior year. And and then it just went bad, and they weren't good to start with when against Buffalo, got just killed. And then, but anyway, we'll get more into that. But it's really injuries, similar to your story. If we can get everybody back, maybe we can make a run. We got to add some pieces, just like you guys just did, pulled the trigger this year. So, that's the general consensus. We're probably lucky to be 3-3, quite frankly, given the how poorly the team's played.
See, I don't believe the 49ers are lucky to be 3-4. I think that it's just been complete incompetence from Jimmy Garoppolo in a lot of those losses. For him to walk out of the back of his own end zone, we had that conversation after that. I mean, that game looks so bad now because the Broncos are terrible. Then the Atlanta Falcons game was just one of those games where the defense didn't come to play. And when the defense isn't going to play, the offense isn't good enough to come from behind. And then I think the Bears game is, it was more the monsoon and the fact that Trey Lance, had to throw in a monsoon. And then last week was the Kansas City Chiefs, who I think are actually better than the Buffalo Bills. And I understand the Buffalo Bills beat the Chiefs, but that Chiefs offense, it's just insane. And their pass rush, while their defense is not great, their pass rush is pretty impressive. They still have Chris Jones. They still have Frank Clark. And I think people kind of forget that until Jimmy Garoppolo has Frank Clark barreling down his neck and doesn't throw the ball away in his own end zone. And so it's kind of a mixture of just the schedule hasn't worked out well for them. And they're not really playing good football. And I think that, you don't trade for Christian McCaffrey unless you realize you have a problem. And they've kind of realized they have a problem. Their run game has been pretty terrible. And as you know, as a Rams fan, the 49ers and the Rams, they're 2 teams that really like to run the football. And so I think that the one good thing about the Christian McCaffrey trade, obviously, is hopefully that it'll get the run game going. But the other thing is that the Rams didn't get him because it seems like your run game has been kind of all over the place this year too.
It's not been all over the place. It's been a tragedy from start to finish. Cam Akers, Mr. Wonderful last year in his miraculous recovery from the Achilles in the same season, 6 months, and just played terrible in the playoffs. Was, it's one thing not to have the burst; it's another to fumble. It's something. Your Achilles isn't fumbling the ball, and he did it in the playoffs last year. Came into this year saying all the right things. I gotta, kind of let the team down, even though we won the Super Bowl. I didn't play well, and this and that, and really we're just looking for that first year Cam Akers, and didn't happen. And then he went south mentally, and bad attitude wise. And he's been essentially relegated to, he'll never play for the Rams again. He'll never practice with the Rams again. He didn't practice this week. He's healthy. They're trying to trade him. And if they can't get a trade, they'll cut him. So,
yeah, I want to say hello to 49ers Throwback. Always supporting the channel. Always appreciate you. I mean, is Darrell Henderson your number one running back at this point?
No, absolutely. Our number two is Malcolm Brown, who's come back from a practice squad somewhere, or maybe out of the league. I don't know. And so just a familiar face. He hasn't gotten very many touches. And then our fourth round draft pick, a guy Kyron Williams from Notre Dame, got hurt, broke his foot in training camp, right? In OTAs, actually, not even training camp. So OTAs, he breaks his foot, and then recovers. I guess it wasn't that broken. He recovers and makes the opening day squad. And his first play on special teams, he's blocking for, he's the back guy blocking for the return guy, and it tears something in his leg, and he has been out since then. He's been on injured reserve, so he's finally off injured reserve. He won't play this week, but he'll be back after that. They're pretty high on him, but this week it's a heavy dose of Cam Akers, and then some guy we signed off of the actually from Northern California, Fresno State, Ronnie Rivers, really good Fresno State guy. But he was. You mean
Henderson, not Akers, right? You said Henderson, not Akers, correct?
No, Ronnie. Darrell Henderson will be number one, and then Ronnie Rivers is a guy we signed out of Fresno State, who's off the practice squad. Who literally didn't.
We know how that goes.
Yeah, and he actually had a good little burst last week. But I mean, we're obviously scraping the bottom of the barrel here when we're talking about that. So yeah, Darrell Henderson is the clear number one.
I'm kind of curious. I thought the Rams would have, obviously I think they went after Christian McCaffrey. I don't think they're out of the sweepstakes yet. I think they could be, in that Alvin Kamara sweepstakes, one of those other running backs who might be moved. I mean, who would be the guy that you would want them to go get?
I mean, Kamara's good. They actually had interest in him a couple years ago when he was renegotiating his contract and whatnot with New Orleans. So, they've had interest in him, and I think there's going to be some sellers, down the road here. I mean, obviously we have this Tuesday, hopefully somebody before then, and we can get a deal done. But there's a smattering of guys around the league. McCaffrey was the clear choice. He's going to definitely do some damage. I mean, he this year he stayed healthy, but his explosiveness on the run game hasn't been there. Like Jeff Wilson and he have very similar stats in the run game. And I know Wilson's been playing pretty well, but the Carolinas doesn't have a bad offensive line. They have our right guard from last year. Anyway, but where McCaffrey really shines and where I think he'll really pick up for you guys is in the passing game out of the backfield. Just another one of those short, that behind the line of scrimmage or 0 to 10 yard target for Jimmy. That just a quick release and let him go, because he's killer and yak, and you guys have plenty of yak guys, and we all know the Niners love their yak, especially when they got Jimmy throwing short passes, right? So you got to get yak guys for Jimmy, and you went and got probably the number one yak running back in the league.
Maybe the number one yak playmaker in the league, to be honest with you, besides Deebo Samuel. It's just that trade. Well, I'm not a huge fan of trading for running backs. I just think that trade, once he finally gets integrated into this offensive system, I think that it'll make the offense a lot better. The problem has been the last 2 weeks against Kansas City and Atlanta has been our defense. And so before we talk about our defense, I'd like to know, what's going on with your defense. And obviously Aaron Donald's playing, great football. He's Aaron Donald, but what's going on with, your acquisitions of, Bobby Wagner and whatnot? Like, is the pass rush just not there? The corner's not covering? What is the real problem you've seen with the Rams defense thus far this season?
Yeah, actually, the defense is playing really well, believe it or not. I mean, it's just our offense is anemic and not, our defense is holding. The only reason we, won any games or been even in some of those other games. Bobby's playing great. I mean, he's, I don't agree with the rating, but he's rated, or at least maybe it was prior to last week, but he's certainly rated as one of the top linebackers, if not the number one linebacker by PFF. And you take that with a grain of salt, so, I don't take it as because it's so subjective, but, usually if you're rated top 5 on PFF, you're actually playing pretty well. It doesn't mean you're not playing like trash and they're rating you that high. So he's been playing well. Everybody's right. He's a little step slower in the pass pro, but he's playing great. And then Ernest Jones, our second year guy, is just flying around the field. So those two guys are literally playing virtually every snap. And then on the defense, on the line, run block, the run defense is great with Donald and the usual cast of characters, Greg Gaines and Ashawn Robinson. But our edges there haven't been a lot of sacks. A lot of teams are trying to release early on us, just like you guys have successfully done. Probably taken a few of the plays out of Kyle's playbook there. But our edges aren't necessarily. There's not a lot of sacks, but they're playing well in general. We're not that bad in terms of pass win rate and pass protection win rate on that side. And then our secondary has been hurt a lot, and it's not terrible. But Jalen Ramsey finally came back to life after sleepwalking through the playoffs last year, including the Super Bowl and the first couple of games of this year. And I thought, man, if that guy's, and people are already talking, cornerbacks don't last past 28, and they've got their, this kind
That's
of
true.
a thing. And but he came back to life, and he's been playing well and really playing well all season. So the defense is not our problem at all. It hasn't been a problem all year. And we play that certain type of defense that, that people call it bend, don't break, whatever it is. It's a too high shell, make people have long sustained drives. But, in that defense, you have to score points. Like last year, we won every game that the defense held teams to 24 or fewer points, 100% of the time, right? You have to put up 27 points a game. And if you're going to play that defense, and, we're obviously not doing that.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like it's been interesting just because you guys did win the Super Bowl, and generally the team that wins the Super Bowl tends to, still play decent the following year. But it really feels like, well, maybe your defense hasn't been a problem. Your offense has just been awful. I mean, outside of Cooper Kupp, who is Stafford really throwing the ball to? I mean, Allen Robinson, I think, caught his first touchdown pass against Carolina. I mean, is it literally just Stafford and the Cooper Kupp? Is that the team right now? I mean, you said Henderson's the running back, but like, let's be honest here. Darrell Henderson isn't really scaring anybody. Malcolm Brown, you said, is hurt now. The offensive line, we could talk about that as well. But like, what has been the offensive identity so far this season?
Yeah, I mean, it's Cooper Kupp. Tyler Higbee has produced a lot on the offensive side. It's been those two guys primarily. A smattering of a couple of other guys. Ben Skoranek has filled in for Van Jefferson, our number 3, and we really miss Van Jefferson. I think he's coming back this week off the injury list, and he's fully healthy and will be ready to go this week. He'll obviously have a little rust coming into the game, but he'll probably get 20 snaps and start to get reintegrated this week. So we'll welcome our number 3 receiver back for sure, especially given the lack of production that we've seen out of Robinson. And and then the other guy that's really produced is a guy named Ben Skoranek. He's this guy that we started running. Basically, he said we set up an 11 personnel every play. I mean, it's almost every. I mean, literally every play. But he's been shifting over to fullback to play that fullback look and opening up some holes for Henderson and then also running out of the backfield on some pass plays and stuff, getting a linebacker on him. So he's done a really good job as well. So just kind of, pulling it together, little here, a little there. But yeah, that it's, if the offensive line is that bad, it doesn't matter who's back there. If it doesn't matter if OBJ's back there. You can't let the guy run a route to get open. And I'm not blaming the offensive line for Allen Robinson's woes. He just seems to have lost a step, to be frank, and they're not scheming him open because he's the more the secondary third look, and he's not the check down. So there's just no room, there's no time to get it to him.
I mean, yeah, it's wild because you guys were, I think, the team scored the most touchdowns, had the most points, and sure you had the most turnovers, but I mean, how does a team go from scoring the most points in the NFL, having the most touchdowns, to bottom of the league in just one offseason? I understand, like, we talked a little bit about, but really emphasize on who is the offensive line now and who left and who's there. And I mean, a lot's changed, and it seems like every problem about the Los Angeles Rams really stems from that offensive line this season.
Oh, it is. It is. You can have an average offensive line and be successful, right? You can lose a guy like you guys lost Trent Williams last year, I think, for a little while. And, obviously that's a huge loss, right? When you lose a top guy for a game, but you fill in, everybody else kind of pitches in, and you kind of deal with it. But in our case, we started off losing Andrew Whitworth and Austin Corbett to free agency. Andrew Whitworth obviously retired, and we replaced him with Joseph Noteboom, right? This guy has been our best backup the last couple years, and playing tackle, playing guard when Whitworth was on COVID and all this stuff, and it just was awesome. And he comes in this year, and they gave him a 3-year contract. It's like $25 million guaranteed or something, and so not a huge left tackle contract, but enough. And he stinks. I mean, he's just terrible. And then our center, Brian Allen, who had had the season of his year, his life last year. He was terrible before, hurt. He almost didn't win the starting job last year, and he played great last year. They re-sign him, and he proceeds to do what he always does, get hurt. And he's been out most of the year. And so we moved our backup center, Coleman Shelton, who plays great, moved him to right guard when that guy went down. And then he gets hurt. And so literally 4 of our 5 starters, basically everybody with Havenstein, has been out this year on IR, or at least out for several games. Like Allen never went on IR, but he was out for 5 games. So it's just, we've had 8 different guys start, 10 different guys get snaps. And we're pulling guys. Jeremiah Colon, who's been our center the last 4 weeks. The guy was literally out of football. He was going to the police academy, and he gets pulled up to the practice squad, and then he has to get elevated to the team. And, he's our starting center. And Matthew Stafford is back there calling the pass coverage as a quarterback. I mean, it's disaster. So, and look, that's the reason. I don't think it's the excuse. I think it's a reason. It's going to get better this week. Even some of our main backups, have been hurt and stuff. But it's a reason. It's not an excuse. It's we gotta plan better, have better depth, and all that kind of stuff. People talk about injuries in the past, and I'm like, it's the whole team. Like, injuries are part of the sport. It's not like you lose a quarterback, fair enough, whatever. But you guys did, but. You're talking about depth positions like offensive line. Like, you got to expect those guys to go down, and you got to build your team with depth, and we don't put a big priority on some of these positions because we're paying guys at the premier positions. And so, fair is fair.
Do you think that that's why this is the situation with the Rams this year? They have this, roster that has the stars who plays, but the minute they get hurt, there's no one behind it. Do you think that that's a problem with the Rams because of the fact that they have this philosophy of, as your general manager says, fuck them picks, this idea that we don't want our draft picks to draft, quality backup guys or guys that, you take in the later rounds who fill spots. Instead, because you lose those picks and you're left using, your lower picks to draft starters. Or what do you think is the core thing that is leading to the Rams really just not having any talent behind the starters, like probably the least talented football teams in the NFL behind those starters?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'd agree with that in particular. And, in general, I think that the Rams have done a good job at finding guys in the in the lower rounds to start. And there's a lot of as has your team and some other teams. Um, the the offensive line situation this year, that is, if that were better, if that were right like it was last year, and they stayed very healthy last year, by the way, which obviously helps. So going into this year worse, like that we pay typically the only contracts, I won't say only, but the vast majority of mid-tier contracts, non-rookie, non-premier level guys, the premier level guys, everybody's quarterback's premier level, but uh, Cup and Donald and Ramsey and Leonard Floyd, our other edge, et cetera. These 15 million plus guys, right? And then so there, by definition, there has to the give up isn't certainly in rookie contracts, but the fact that we don't sign the first round first round guys that make a lot of money, the Trey Lances of the world, et cetera, that make really good, actually pretty good money, also helps the scale, right? So it's all lower guys on the rookie end, and then the middle tier guys are almost exclusively dedicated to our offensive line. So we pay those guys and try and retain those guys. Last year, Whitworth was paid, Havenstein's paid, our right tackle, Allen's paid, and on a mid-tier contract. Brian Allen, our center, Noteboom got paid this year on a mid-tier contract, our left guard. So these guys get paid on the offensive line. Noteboom was just a bust as a signing. Hey, Allen got hurt. Havenstein hasn't been playing well. And then all these backup guys, nobody's really paying any decent money to backup linemen. And so, they just didn't hit and they got hurt, And so, I mean, I'm a believer in the formula. And like you guys just did, I'm a huge believer in trading picks for proven players. People say, oh, you overpaid for a running back. He's not a running back. He's not your
offensive weapon.
He's a fuck. Yeah, exactly. Like he's a better receiver than he is running back. Like, let's face it. And I mean, I know he's in line up out there, but it's he's a weapon, and he's not underpaid for a yak machine. He's just not. And his only reason that there was any question about that contract whatsoever is how injury prone he is. If he hadn't been injury prone, that dude would have got a first and a third. I mean, it's just that special. So
absolutely,
yeah. So anyway, there's a false narrative that the Rams don't have backup players because they pay the top guys. The reality is we don't have a lot of middle tier guys, and we don't have any busts in the first round that we're still paying with, like a lot of teams are.
I mean, actually, that gets me to my next question. This is more of a joke question, but I think it's something I've wanted to ask you last time and I didn't. Is Tutu Atwell the worst pick in Rams history?
Oh God, there's been a lot of bad picks in Rams history. I think I will blame Tutu Atwell. First of all, I think he'll get traded when they ultimately trade.
Who's going to trade for him? He's terrible.
No. He's going to be a throw-in. He's going to be a throw-in instead of he's not terrible, believe it or not. I mean, he's really not. He's just not. This is not the offense for him. Like he's, in this offense, you have to block as a wide receiver. Like you have to participate in blocking, and he's too small. He probably think, little Mighty Mouse thinks he could do it, but he's just going to get, he's not going to do a crackdown on a defensive end or an edge. So, or a line, somebody. So the wrong offense for him. They should have never drafted him. It's more on them. He's never had an opportunity. I mean, he's showed his speed. He's the only guy he's run literally the fastest 2 routes in the NFL this year. I mean, the guy is fast as hell. He's just and those were on both of his receptions. His two receptions are the fastest a wide receivers run in the NFL this year. That's like crazy. And so he has skill, he has talent. I mean, he kind of screwed himself when he couldn't return a punt. He couldn't catch a punt and return it. So kind of lost some opportunity there, and then he got hurt. But, he's just not bad. I blame Tutu Atwell on our team, not on a fit, not on not on capability. I really do believe that he'll find the right offense, and at some point in time, if not get traded, he'll eventually won't get re-signed by the Rams. He'll end up somewhere, and he'll have a decent career. He probably not second round worthy, but maybe fourth round worthy or something.
We're going to talk about but I want to get to Dane Lee's question. He says here, do you see us making a last-minute trade before the deadline? I'm pretty sure he's talking about the Niners. Yeah, and I think Christian McCaffrey is as good as it's going to get, and I think that's a pretty good trade. They might go get like some, no-name defensive tackle they think they can turn into something good under Chris Kasarik. That wouldn't surprise me, but I think that I'm pretty happy with Christian McCaffrey. I think that he's going to help Trey Lance, and he's going to help this offense get going. I think, let's talk a little bit about this Rams game. So the 49ers have owned the Rams. Outside of that NFC Championship game, which was still pretty close, the 49ers games have not been close with the Rams. So, as a Rams fan, I want you to tell me, why will it be different this time, or what is the reason it will be closer? Or because as a Niner fan, not to talk shit or be like an asshole, I just think that with Christian McCaffrey only playing like 20 snaps last week, we didn't really get to see exactly what he is in this offense. Christian McCaffrey is going to be fully featured in this offense. And while it doesn't look like Debo might not play, or who knows what's happening with that, there's kind of rumors and people saying he will or won't, We'll see if he practices tomorrow. But if Debo doesn't play, I think this is going to be the Christian McCaffrey game. I think that he's just going to run all over you guys. Jimmy's going to just dink and dunk it to him all day. What is the reason you think, as a Rams fan, that you're confident that this is a game that the Rams can win?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I can say is what I would hope for is that we would play a scheme that was closer to what we played in that championship game when Raheem Morris really pushed McVay to let him, load the box a little bit more. And so, I know McCaffrey kind of spreads that out. He's not, he can run between the tackles. Don't get me wrong, but they're not going to, I don't think that's his primary usage. And so I just think they'll get more guys in the box and make Jimmy, do what he hasn't been able to do. And he certainly wasn't able to do when they did that in that championship game. So we didn't see that happen in the first game of this year. I'm not sure exactly why they didn't do that, but they didn't. I just went back and watched that game, and they were really more, going back to the old way that they were playing and trying to protect underneath. I feel like they think that they have the underneath protected a little bit better, getting rid of Troy Reader and replacing with Bobby Wagner. Just wasn't the case. It was still got torn up in the middle, and then poor tackling and some other things. So, that's why I would hope that that's what they do and see how it goes. And they got to be able to shift their identity. McVay he's very stubborn, and he wants to impose his will on other people, and he's very doesn't change very often in response to other people, and unless it's just kind of ground into everybody like he did this year when we had no run game, and he finally said, well, let's let this big wide receiver play some fullback, and he opened up some holes. They have a really high EPA when running. Anyway, so that's what I think. Offensively, though, I mean, defensively is where we usually had our trouble against the Niners. Offensively, hasn't necessarily been the issue, and offensively for us, it's just going to come down to that O-line. It just is. And if your guys, I mean, I think you guys it's a heavy dose of, what is it? Obviously Bosa and Amenahu and Ibukam and Ridgeway Givens. These guys are all just, Jackson's getting playing time. Hyder. I mean, it's just, you guys having a fresh dude on the field every play. And it's crazy. And then the linebackers are obviously tough. It's, what is it, Warner and Greenlaw? I don't know how Greenlaw's doing right now. I think he got hurt last game. I've never heard of this Flanagan Fowles guy, but I guess he's getting some snaps and stuff. So.
Yeah, without Aziz and without Dre Greenlaw, they've been moving in Flanagan Fowles, and he's fine. I think that the most exciting thing for me as a Niner fan going to this game, besides Christian McCaffrey, of course, I think is the fact that Jason Verrett might be starting opposite. There is a chance, obviously, I don't know, but Jason Verrett might be starting opposite of Mooney Ward, because Patrick Mahomes really just went after whoever was playing that other corner spot in that game, and they just didn't have an answer. Granted, their defensive tackles have been pretty terrible ever since Kinlaw and Armstead got hurt, who will be coming back after the bye week, which I think that'll be a huge boon in their defense and really getting to the quarterback. The one thing that's nice about this matchup for the 49ers is they're playing, what is probably one of the worst offensive lines in the game. And so I really feel like as a 49er fan, I feel confident just because we seem to have the recipe to defeat you. But I think that Garoppolo has played particularly pretty bad this season outside of a Rams game. And so I'm hoping that this playing good against the Rams is a thing he continues, because the way he played against the Chiefs was just abysmal. I mean, imagine this. Your quarterback has the potential to put 3 points on the board no matter what, and the bozo throws it up in the air and gets intercepted in the end zone. And it's just like, what the are you doing? What are you even looking at? And so that's been the biggest problem with the 49ers is it just really feels like their quarterback is just out to lunch all the time. And so, I mean, it's when you think about this matchup, I obviously give the nod to Stafford. He's an absolutely way better quarterback. He's smarter, has a better arm. Even, the arm fatigue thing was more of a joke we did as Niner fans because it was funny because people said Trey Lance had arm fatigue.
Yeah, no,
but I never really
that tendonitis in his arm kept him from throwing the whole preseason ever since the Super Bowl. So, and he had a huge injection in there, one of those steroid injections, not a, whatever you want to call it, one of those injections, and some cocktail, and he was literally couldn't throw the whole off season, including training camp, in 11 on 11s. And so that was real. I mean, it wasn't fatigue. It was arm tendonitis. They call it pitcher's elbow or something.
Yeah. I didn't think the Rams would be this bad. I think it's been pretty impressive how bad they've been this season, just because, they did win the Super Bowl last year, and the NFC, as a Rams fan, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. The NFC's terrible. I mean, Tampa Bay is awful. And that was the only team that scared, but Green Bay is awful. I think Minnesota's decent. I think the Giants are okay. I think the Eagles are sort of weird. I think they're good, but I'm not sold on them yet. They haven't really beat anybody good.
Easiest schedule in the league by far. It's not even close.
Yeah, they're playing a bunch of terrible teams, and granted, that'll probably get them.
The Giants. What about the Giants, Niner, Nate?
I don't know. If the Giants. I think Daniel Jones sucks, but that defense is good. I don't know. They played the Seahawks this weekend. I can't even tell if the Seahawks are good because we absolutely stomped them at home like we did you guys. This is such a weird year. Like the AFC is the Buffalo Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs and everybody else. And the NFC is the Eagles right now, I guess, technically, the Giants, the Vikings, and everybody else. And it's just like the teams, nobody expected it to be the Eagles, the Giants, and the Vikings. None of those teams are teams that have been there. None of those teams have done it. None of those teams have. I don't see those teams being able to win a Super Bowl against Kansas City or Buffalo.
The NFC is so far, the best.
It's wide open.
It's wide open.
Absolutely wide open.
And that's and not only is the NFC wide open, but our division is wide open. I was just looking at. I don't know if you ever look at these football power index by ESPN. So ESPN Analytics puts together this football power index and of all the teams based upon this, just a lot of different stats and stuff. And they come out with this thing, and then they look at it in terms of who they're, who we played and who we're going to play and all this stuff, and projects percentage chance that each team a percentage chance of making the playoffs, percentage chance of winning the division, et cetera, going, winning this all the way up to the Super Bowl. And our division is the only division that has all four teams with, so the Rams, the Seahawks, and the Cardinals are all 16% chance to win the division. And the Niners are basically 50% chance to win the division, 51. So you guys are far and away favorites to win the division based upon this FPI analysis of, of the team, your team, and then who you have left to play. But all other divisions are, there's at least two teams like below 5% chance. Like the only other division that's really super competitive is the AFC North, where Cincinnati and Baltimore are in a virtual deadlock. And then, the other two teams are just trash, Pittsburgh and Cleveland. So I just think our division is still, semi up for grabs. You guys are the clear favorite at this point, even though, with the losing record. But so yeah, it's interesting. But then when you look at the NFC, the Philadelphia is the only team. Maybe you throw Minnesota in there, but I don't. It's still Minnesota. They'd still be Minnesota if Green Bay
still
were good.
Kirk Cousins.
They would still be Minnesota. If Green Bay were great, they'd still be everybody. But they didn't take it. Like that old joke. If you want to volunteer for this, really dangerous mission, take a step forward. This line of guys, and everybody takes a step back, but one guy. And they're like, oh, so it's like everybody's taking a step back and they've stayed the same. So all of a sudden they're the class of the conference. So
I know it's so weird. I just never seen anything like this. And I think that maybe it's just the Rams and the 49ers getting started, a little slower. But I think that the big thing about this game is it's a must-win game for both teams, right? If the 49ers win this, they're probably going to win the division most likely because I think they're going to beat Seattle in Seattle. I think they'll take care of Arizona twice. I mean, listen to this, Tom. Some of the final teams they play the Chargers, who we all know are terrible, it looks like. The Seahawks just blew them out. The Saints, the Dolphins, the Buccaneers, the Commanders, the Raiders, the Cardinals. They play some of the worst teams in football. And if they can't win those games, I don't know what's going on with the 49ers. And I want to blame Jimmy Garoppolo, but I'd love to know, as an outside perspective, what do you think of this Kyle Shanahan thing where people are just mad at Kyle Shanahan for hurting the quarterback and they think he should be fired because they're not winning games that are winnable games? Granted, I don't think Kansas City was winnable. I just thought the 49ers would play better. I'd love to know what are your thoughts?
City. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Kansas City, that's not you're not expected to win that game, even though it's not at home. Like, in this currently in the state that you're in, like nobody expected San Francisco to win that game. What they did is they expected San Francisco to beat Chicago for sure. And then after Denver, especially in retrospect, 2020 hindsight, like you had said, they expected you should have beat Denver. Like you should have not lost that game. And then Atlanta. And so like those, you should be 6-1. And that's how I view it. I'm like, very lucky that you're not running away with this thing, and we're sitting here just kind of treading water. And so, yeah, I mean, I think we're lucky to be where we are. Like the games that we lost are Buffalo, San Francisco, and Dallas. Like those are three good teams. And you're like, okay, I can see that. And the teams you've lost to are, Chicago, Denver, and Atlanta, who we beat. And so, and it's like, yeah, you probably should.
You almost lost to Atlanta, though. Don't forget that. That game came down to the wire.
No, I know, but we were killing them, and then we had a punt block for a touchdown, and Cooper Kupp, got stripped. I mean, that's like it's Tampa Bay, divisional playoffs all over again. It was just almost that was the Rams imploding. That wasn't a close game. It was like we were killing them. And then just almost gave it to him. So I don't count that in terms of how the team plays. Like, yeah, of course, the team's mistakes or whatever, but that I just don't think that was like, a team almost, the final score, but we were dominating that team. All we had to do was not turn the ball over and we win. And so anyway, but no, they're playing better. So of those three teams, I mean, Atlanta's the better team than Chicago and Denver for sure. The way they're playing. But my point is that, yeah, then we look down the road and the Rams have, all of a sudden the schedule has gotten a lot easier for the Rams. So it's San Francisco and then at Tampa Bay, which was, oh my God. And then it was Arizona. Hopefully that's a win. At New Orleans, they're no good. Yeah. Kansas City, we got to go to Kansas City. That's an L, and then Seattle, Las Vegas, who stinks. Green Bay is no good. Denver, the Chargers are no good in Seattle. So like all of our schedules have just gotten a lot easier. Like going into the season, we were by far, had the hardest schedule on paper based on last year's win totals. And this year, and it's just eased up because a lot of these teams, and primarily Tampa Bay and Green Bay, two teams that you don't get, are way down, and that's a huge
way bad. Yeah,
exactly. which way bad. The teams that you did get, so we got the three differences in schedule. Just I think we talked about this a little bit. Ours were Dallas, who's up, like I didn't think they were going to be, but the down
We got
teams
the Commanders.
Yeah, Tampa Bay and Green Bay, and you guys got the Bears, the Commanders, and the Dolphins are your three. So
the Dolphins game will be interesting just because it is Mike McDaniels, but Kyle tends to generally play good against people who are his proteges. So I think that they should win that game. But let's get just down to the brass tacks of this game. What do you think the score is going to be? How do you think the Rams can pull off a win? And then I'll give my own prognosis on that.
Yeah, no, I think that again, it's what do I think is going to happen? I think that not a lot's going to change on our offensive line, unfortunately. I mean, I'd love to sit here and be optimistic, but Brian Allen coming back, we lost probably two of our best linemen, Tremaine Ankrum and Coleman Shelton, and the guys that are in there now are Ode Abushi, who didn't even make the practice squad guy, and Bobby Evans, who's probably one of our worst draft picks ever, third rounder a couple years ago. Just terrible. I mean, and so anyway, I just don't feel like this line's going to hold up unless McVay makes some significant changes in the offensive scheme. Then it could be a long day for the Rams, and I'm hoping that's not the case, but I don't see it being that, and I see the Rams kind of continuing to flounder, maybe 17 points, and I think that with McCaffrey getting integrated back into the offense, or integrated into the offense with another week, and some of your weapons coming back, I think it'll be interesting to see what happens with Debo. But you got McCaffrey instead of Debo. So anyway, I've never been on a show in my short time being on shows, on my own show or any other show, where I've picked against the Rams. And this is the first time I'm going to pick against the Rams. I mean, I've always said, again, I'm pretty new to the stuff, so the Rams have been pretty good while I've been doing this. So, there's a reason for it. But I've always said, I'll always, when the Rams ultimately get into a downturn, I've always thought to myself, I'm going to be honest. I'm not going to be a homer and just be some optimistic pick. That's not what, I'm trying to be I try to be realistic.
Totally. And I appreciate
so I'm picking against the Rams. I'm going to say it's going to be, 31-17.
Wow. That's higher than I was going to go. I mean, I think the 49ers are going to roll. I think this is going to be one of those games where Kyle Shanahan comes out and it's just one of those teams that does not beat him in the regular season. It does not matter how bad his quarterback. It does not matter how bad the defense is playing. He does not lose to the Los Angeles Rams. He just doesn't do it. And so I think this is going to be a big Christian McCaffrey game. I think the defense is going to get a pick six or just some sort of pick off Stafford because of how much pressure is going to be on him all day. And I think the minute that happens, the game will pretty much turn into what the last one was. I mean, it's a home game for the 49ers. No offense to the Rams. That stings more Niner fans than it is Rams fans. I know so many Niner fans going to this game. It's just one of those games where no matter how bad the 49ers are playing, they're going to find a way to beat the Rams. And I think this is our get-right game. They beat the Rams, go into a bye week, come back from the bye week a lot more healthy, play a terrible Chargers team in that same building, and really just get their stuff together and really find a way to get that third seed or second seed, one of those just high seeds to potentially make a playoff run. The problem is, and I'll tell you this, Ramsbeat, Tom, Jimmy Garoppolo is fucking terrible. And I really feel like if it is left to Jimmy Garoppolo's hand like it was in the NFC Championship game, the Rams could pull off some magic. The guy just doesn't have any field awareness. He doesn't know where he is half the time. And I really feel like as long as Kyle Shanahan is able to keep the ball out of Jimmy Garoppolo's hands, they should roll. But there's always this thought in the back of my mind, whenever he trots out on that football field, handsome and all, that he's going to find a way to lose this game. And so I'm going to take the 49ers, but I'm going to take the 49ers at 24-17. I think that this is a lot closer because Jimmy Garoppolo has done nothing this year to show me that he's good enough to run this offense the way it should be. And I hope that maybe this is just the Christian McCaffrey game where he just rolls on you guys and our defense plays decent. But I do not trust Jimmy Garoppolo. Someone told me one time, and this is pretty good, that he's an arsonist who's also a firefighter. So he puts the fires, and then he has to go put them out himself. And that's Jimmy Garoppolo in a nutshell. And so we have 10 more games of this madness before we finally get to the rookie quarterback we spent all those picks on, who we actually got to watch for a game. And even though he played in the rain, he looked pretty decent. So we'll see all that. But this is the last time we'll see you guys this year. So always, Rams, Tom, I appreciate you coming on this season. It's been a lot of fun. If people want to check out your content or talk smack to you after the Rams lose on Sunday, how can they do it?
Oh, I'm always in, as you know, and just go into the Niners space on Twitter and win, lose, or draw. I'm always in there. The Niner, they're, I get my fair share of abuse, but I try and bring it right, and they always bring me up, and which I can't say for some other fans, or at least I don't get kicked. So no, you can always talk to me there. Obviously, I'm in Ram spaces and in most of the NFL spaces on Twitter most of the time at Ramsbeat. I have a podcast at Downtown Rams, Spaces podcast on all the major podcast outlets, Spotify, Apple, etc., and do some content on Downtown Rams, our blog. So just kind of in and around things, but mostly on the Twitter spaces.
Well, appreciate you coming on. Good luck, but not too much good luck to your team.
Yeah.
If you want to find me at 90849, it's right there on the header. You can follow the podcast. Check it out. It's 908's Nonsense on YouTube. If you're watching this on Twitter, make sure you subscribe. Check it out. We're always live. We will be off next week for the 49ers bye week to let everyone just take a breather so we don't have to talk about anything, especially lose, because I will tell you, Tom, these 49er fans are rabid. They say the wildest shit you've ever heard, and they truly believe, some of them truly believe, this team would be better with Sean Payton over Kyle Shanahan, and that's the wildest fucking thing I've ever heard in my entire life. The guy is taking you to 2 NFC championship games and a Super Bowl, and people want him gone because he's playing with a backup quarterback. But that's why we're not doing a show next week. We're going to take the week off. We're not going to deal with all that. I appreciate you again, Tom. Good luck. Go Niners. And the hype train never stops. We will see you after the bye week.